Frozen Music is a video series from ABB presenting unique building projects and the architects behind them to a global community. Follow us around the world.
Welcome back, and now we're going to hear about the winner of the residential category in future projects, which is the Maison d'Italie, and the designers, Studio Razavi, are going to tell us about it. So please start the presentation.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Ali Reza Razavi, and this is our presentation for the new building at the Maison d'Italie on the Paris campus of the Cité Universitaire. So we were called for this project about 4 years ago, and it was about, in addition to an existing building, to the Maison d'Italie. The campus is located on the southern tip of Paris, and it's a very special place in Paris. It was one of the last remaining plots of land in the early 20th century. It was privately owned, and it was given to the city to create a large campus on which every country could build its own house to host students from all over the world. This is looking at the campus itself. It has amazing facilities. It's very green. It's near public transportation, and the location of our site is that little red rectangle that you see in the upper right-hand corner. So what makes this place so unique is that there's basically a representation of all the styles and the currents of architecture throughout the 20th century, from neoclassicism, sheer classicism, to modernism, neo-regionalism, so on and so forth. What makes it even more special for architects at large is that there's two of the most remarkable, I think, of Le Corbusier's buildings, because they're of a very specific scale, very intimate, and that is the Maison Suisse, the Swiss foundation, and the Maison du Brésil, which hosts the Brazilian foundation. And they're really remarkable in the way they sit on this campus. And as we moved through the design of this project, we not only wanted to make sure that our design was an integral part of the culture of the campus, but we also sort of looked around us at what the representation of Italian modernism, because our client was the Italian state, was in Paris. And the one designer that I was really keen on to putting forward was Luigi Nervi, the Italian structural engineer. And Nervi had a prominent role in the UNESCO building, and later on at the Australian embassy, for which he designed those piles as a sort of a doubly curved shape. And all these examples sort of pushed for a specific typology of a raised building, which on this specific site had a lot of echo with not just the existing buildings, but with the specific constraints of our site. There aren't really plots on the campus. It is the chair of the universities that essentially designates these plots to be built. So this is one of the last remaining future plots on the campus. And the way it was defined, and the reason why it took so much time, is because there are many constraints, some physical and some administrative, and some that are historical. So essentially, we defined the perimeters with the board of the campus by gradually establishing what the constraints were. We have a group of large trees which we did not want to cut just north of our site. We have the existing Portaluppi building essentially abutting the site, and we have another Maison across the path from our plot. And so the setbacks from all these buildings, the height restrictions, the view corridors that we wanted to protect, essentially started defining what you see as a black dotted line, a circle. And one of the other constraints that we wanted to introduce was to not only not exceed the existing house, but just be a floor lower, so that in terms of hierarchy of what's visible between new and old, it would be extremely easy to distinguish it. We're looking now at the project, axonometric view. What you see with the clay roof in the background is the existing Portaluppi building and the new addition in front. I mean, it's both humbling and challenging to build across from Corb. So I guess what we tried to focus on was also the relationship with Portaluppi's building, which is neoclassical, a bit on the harsh side, but extremely well defined as far as what the functions of the building are. So looking at a section of the building, you see that large group of trees that I was referring to. We tried to create we started with the base of the building. We wanted to make sure that because this is a campus, there would be a specific place for students to regroup and profit from the space. So it was important for us to create outdoor spaces. This section also shows that we are limited in height, a floor below the existing. And of course, there's a direct hint to the San Gimignano Towers with our pine trees above. Our design obviously will affect the existing buildings with the full reconfiguration of the first floor and the ground floor. There will be a restaurant on the ground floor. The floor plan is extremely straightforward. It's a fan shaped. It can be adapted to multiple configurations of bedrooms. The typical unit is, as you see it here, extremely efficient. It's actually a square meter above what was asked of us. And the fan shape is interesting because it allows to enter the corridors where the space is compressed. The bathroom is immediately to your right, and then it opens up to the light and to the main room. Seeing the same space in section. Looking at the building from the street onto the campus. So as you can see, it is raised on these concrete pillars. The structure is essentially around the core with 8 lines of load-bearing columns on the facades. We're pricing both curved glass and flat glass. I have to say both have a specific quality. This shows the connection with the existing Portaluppi building. We wanted to make sure that this line, the horizontal line that defined the ground floor for him, as in most of his projects, would be a continuation onto our building with a separate entrance for the restaurant on the new addition and the pine trees on top. Drawing in closer, we have nixed about 5 parking spaces in the building in order to create the grounds around it, and which shifts to the use of bikes within the campus. So that's sort of a general policy that's happening. And looking at the base of the building, the raised platform above, and the cafeteria, which sort of gently sits in these grounds as the terrain slopes up towards the street. And that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I remember seeing the Pavilion Suites probably 30 years ago. And it's quite an interesting collection of buildings. But I wonder, Mariana, would you like to start with this one?
Sure. First of all, congratulations for your courage. I must think it's a hard one to touch. Also, Lucio Costa's inheritance there. I think it's a beautiful design, beautiful dialogue with the surroundings. I was wondering something about the shapes more, this connection of straight lines and curves. like that in most of the references you shared, we have more of a, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's making them concurrent. And in your design, you were very clear in making round shapes, and then in your column you have the beam or the capital coming, and then the round shape. Was that a design intention, or how do you see that?
Yes, I'm not showing you the facade, the main elevation of the Portaluppi building, but like I said, it's a rather harsh building. It's neoclassical, but extremely rigid, and we wanted to make sure that that our
Austere,
building
right?
did
It
not.
seems from the photos. It looks very austere, very
Yes, it's very austere.
not
So
very
essentially,
on.
we
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, I think what we wanted to do also maybe in reference to the other buildings, not just Corbusier, but I think we wanted to try and express the functionality of the building in its simplest form. So this is why we just essentially tried to extrude that that form that we initially had, which was is essentially a result of all these constraints. And as far as expressing the building itself, well, I wanted to make sure that the structure would be visible from the outside, because I think that this is really what connects the building with its surroundings. And then in terms of opening, I think what was interesting, I mean, specifically in this image, is that times have changed, right? Um, Portaluppi's openings were extremely limited, and so I figured that we just really wanted to not do anything fussy about it, but just express the structure and the opening, because I mean there was a report that was given to us and that detailed how much natural lighting impacted students' behavior and well-being. So we just wanted to invest in natural lighting, I guess.
Anka, would you like to ask a question about this one?
Yeah, no, that's one of it really sits very well, and yeah, like again, it's a beautiful project. I was also wondering, just in terms of, when you look at the operating costs of the building and the vistas that open up from being inside the building, because of the fact that it's sitting so close, confined within the boundaries of the existing built structures. What was the approach when you looked at it inside out, in terms of the use of glass and the opacity and privacy conversation that must have kind of become
Right.
I'm
Right.
sure it was
If
a
you
challenge to think through. Yeah.
Right. In terms of operating cost, I mean, obviously, what was needed here were additional student rooms, and not all students are here for the same duration of time. So the way the rooms are allocated is essentially based on how long the students will remain. Some of them are PhD students. Some students are only here as interns, so only for 6 months. So if you look at the floor plan here, the way the stair is located, essentially the closest to the building, is what defined the general layout. And starting just north of the staircase is where, just north and south, are the two set of rooms that are the closest to the existing building. And those are rooms that are for students that are meant to stay the shortest amount of time. So this is pretty much how it was defined. What's drastically lacking is additional bedrooms for students. So we wanted to make sure that we would also increase the capacity in the existing building by eliminating redundancy in kitchen or technical uses, because the original building hadn't been renovated in 40 years. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peter.
If you can hear me now,
I can.
I was delighted by it, and I thought, as with the other two projects, I think it's bold, and it's also simple. It's also slightly naughty. I love the having just in yesterday's lecture shown the Campanini and Lucca, which has these trees on the top. and I was delighted to recognize it again today. And I think it's extremely bold when you think about it, and you did explain the significance of the context. And that instead of sort of fussing around and being hyper nervous, you said, right, let's stick this drum in there. And I think just apropos the windows, it did occur to me that one interpretation would be to slightly modify the glass or the opening so that as you go into the dark part of the building, i.e. that close to the other building, that you might modify. But then maybe I'm fussing too much. I mean, the great thing about your building is that it doesn't fuss, and so many buildings do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. You know, at one point we just, I mean, I was a structural engineer myself in a previous life, and it just seemed that, you know, yeah, I don't think we were trying to mimic anything, and you know, it would have been a dangerous flirtation with Cord being so close. But I think, you know, in a funny way, the Portaluppi building and its mass helped a lot, you know, because it sort of called for something. It was an invitation for something simple.
You bounce off it.
Geometry.
You bounce off it.
Yeah, can I ask, I mean, I thought some of the most attractive imagery was about the restaurant in the sort of lower ground level space. Is it just for the students or the residents of this building, or is it open to the public?
It's open to the general public.
Good. And how many students can live in your extension, and how many rooms does that add to the Fondation in total? It
adds, depending on the configuration, it will add between 22 and 28 rooms.
Right, because I mean I think your comments about the fan shape are well made. That you know, it's used by other architects, by Bertrand Goldberg at Marina City in Chicago, for example. That what it does is that it gives you space where you want it, which is towards the edge, and that's where these rooms, when you're talking about basically single room studio apartments, they open out, and you don't waste rooms, which so many hotels do, with big corridors and big bedrooms. It gives you where you need it. So I think I would echo the comments that other jurors have made, which is that this is a really appropriate sort of form, and I think that the point about bouncing off the Portaluppi building is very well made. I mean, that's a building that needs to be bounced off because of its solidity.
Yes, we acted.
Peter,
can I just make another? Yeah, can I make another point, which is I'm amused by your attitude, because I think where you say, okay, we know that the rooms close into the other building are not going to be as good as the other ones. So we say, so you use the people to make the architecture, you bounce it back. It's not a lot of people would do it. Not a lot of people would admit that some part of their building is less advantageous. You say, of course it is. So we give it to the people coming and going. And I like that. It's like extending architecture into habits and then bouncing the thing back. I think that's an original approach.
Very honest solution, I think, right?
Yeah.
Very honest.
Yeah.
Good. Well
done.
Are there any other comments, Anko or Mariano? Okay, well, Ali, would you like to say something? You've got another minute if there's something else you want to explain about the building, possibly about the decision about glass, whether, because you said you're going to price for curved or flat. Presumably that will be decided by price, but...
Right. Well, I mean, that's really interesting, because we started this project 5 years ago, and 5 years ago, the cost for curved glass was significantly higher than it is now. But because this is a constant curvature, now we're seeing the cost. I mean, pre-COVID, things have changed a little now, but pre-COVID, the cost had dropped by 20%. So there's there's a chance that the budget may sustain curved glass, but you know, I mean, we'll have to
I like
see
the
about
idea
it.
of flat glass here, that keeping the austerity of the whole
Yeah,
project.
exactly,
I
exactly.
think it's
I feel as though
honest
there's
again,
something
right?
about the flat glass that makes it more coherent.
Yeah, Niemeyer and Lucio Costa did all those curves without curved glass. Very dignifying, right? In a very dignifying way. I think it's
Yes,
smart.
I think I would agree with that.
And spend it
Good. Well,
more
thank
in
you very
the
much.
kids' rooms.
We now finished. The time's run out. So thank you very much for presenting the project. We'll have another short break, and then we'll come back to hear about the future project, the winner of the infrastructure category. Thank you. See you in a moment.